Okay, so I put the vents in on this Sporty. There was nothing there before. I was putting oil everywhere. So I put these vents in here. Meets in the middle, comes back through here, down, and then I had it dumping down there. You know, maybe put a filter on it later. But I'm thinking I might use these two bolts here. I got this stainless pipe laying around, and I thought about mounting it to these two brackets here, putting a little thing there to cut it down to about here, and then I cut it at a 45 so that I would have room for the input and a vent on it, so that the oil would go in, and then if there's any pressure there, it's going to vent out. And on the bottom, I'd have a cap where you could pull it down to dump anything that's in there, or put some media up in there. Usually I do just like some steel wool or something like that up in there, and just to catch the oil. I put one similar to this on my bike, and I've never had any oil in it, ever. Mostly what gets put into these things is moisture vapor from cold starts, that kind of thing. But being that this is a turboed bike, I imagine it's getting a little more blow by than normal. But considering it didn't have anything on these vents before, it was nasty, but I would have expected it to be a lot worse. So I don't know, I'm toying with this idea. See if I could do this without putting a ton of time into it, but I think that would be pretty cool. What you got here, this is actually, I'm in the printer business, and this is actually a sleeve for a print head, and this is a part of the print head that slips inside of here. So what I've done is cut it all apart, and this part slips right in here, which is nice. So then I can just put a nice little bead around there, and then I want to put a 1/4-inch plug, a brass plug in there, so that I can empty this if it happened to get full of moisture or what have you. And then I'll also pack the filter with it, put in steel wool or what have you inside of it. And then you could pull it out of there if you had to. Reality, you'll probably just throw some solvent in there, shake it, rinse it out. It's not really a filter, it's just a media that's gonna help capture the oil vapor. So on mine, I put a bigger one of these on there. You can actually change this stuff, but again, you really don't have to. So this is a 1/4-inch NPT. What I did was I cut it off of this fitting I had laying around. This is stainless steel. I just got it in off of an old piece of equipment. But you could just cut a piece of round stock and thread it to a 1/4-inch. It's just stainless is too big of a pain in the ass to do that with when I've got this sitting here. So, I got 3 ends on this. I can do 3 more of these. So I'm gonna put this on here, weld that up, get it in place, and then I'll put a bead around there, and then I'll go about cutting the end off here. Let's start on the other end. Okay, getting ready to set this up to weld it. One thing I like to do when I can, you notice put this brass piece in here just to polish this thing up, but I'm gonna leave it in here because I ground my table, and then when I weld it, the part's sitting on it. But if you got a finished part and it lays on here, sometimes you can get an arc mark on there. This thing's too small to hook up a ground to it. So I'll have that brass part touching there while I weld it up, and that way I'm not scratching the part up or getting an arc mark from the table. So it, you know, you get your part all done and you start looking around and you're like, what? I don't remember dropping it there or what have you. Well, it came from your table. Okay guys, I welded the top on here and I got the wrench fitting ready to go on, ready to finish out welding. I had to flip it upside down because it wanted to canter on there too much. So what I'll do is I'll weld around there and then I'll just make that flat on the sander and it'll look great. So this tiny little weld on here, I mean, this thing is really small. As you can see, that thing is really tight. Those, they look like they're super difficult, but honestly, a fusion weld like that on here, if you can see it, these are the easiest things to do, man. Like, it just melts right together if you got good material on stainless, and it just goes right together, man. It just looks like butter when you can get those. Like, I don't need a lot of strength on this, so I don't have to add any rod to it. I just melt them together. And I'll do the same thing under here. Hopefully it turns out. So, but those are pretty easy, man. Like, but when you start, if you had to add rod to that, it would make it much more difficult. This thing just super quick. You just zing it right out, and it's no big deal. So. Okay, so I'm back here with the catch can. I had this thing completed, and I just couldn't get it to jive with me when I was trying to put it on the bike. It's too big. So I took almost 1.5 inches out of the length of this thing. I had to cut it in the middle because I got this piece inside of it. But, so I'm shortening it. It's just gonna be, it doesn't need to be any bigger than that. So I just want it to look right. So I'm gonna shorten it, put a little weld on there and see what the weld looks like. I'm gonna try not to add much, if any, rod to that and just see what it looks like, because it'll be strong enough. It's not doing anything really, so. But let's see what that, shorter I think is gonna be better on here. Okay, this is the finishing of the catch can. There it is. I shortened it 1.5 inches almost. And then I also decided to just leave the weld bluing on here. It'll match up with the exhaust system. So I'd already taken it off on a couple of these, so I just ran another pass around everything, and just to give it a little bit of color, and then I cleaned it up a little bit. But it's got a vent here, and then this is your in, of course, and it's got a plug in the bottom, and then so that'll catch moisture and whatever oil from the bypass, from the crankcase ventilation up here. So pretty tidy in there. I was originally gonna turn it the other way, like a slash cut, but it just, every time I turn it this way, I thought it seems to jive better. So last minute decisions, but it's definitely solid on there and looks pretty cool. It's a little add-on. I could have just dumped it out the bottom, but I thought this area, since we took this away, it looks kind of cool with it, because the exhaust comes over here and that'll be exposed, with the exception of this brake rod coming through there. So anyway, that's it. On to the next thing.